My name is Haley. I'm a 40-year-old who's gotten into the habit of browsing quick recipes on Twitter whenever I have some free time. Lately, I've been finding a lot of microwavable meals, which is a godsend for a busy housewife like me. My husband doesn't realize these are easy dishes. He thinks I'm making elaborate meals, which makes me seem like a wonderful wife. I just hope he never catches on to the truth. Anyway, today I want to share a story that really troubled me. Something I went through with my mom friends. I think it's worth hearing. It happened about 5 years ago. A family named Price moved into the apartment next to ours. Our family consists of my husband Wyatt, myself, and our 10-year-old daughter Paisley. The Price family, just like us, is a family of three with a 10-year-old daughter. To be honest, I'm not great at neighborhood relations, but as our kids are the same age, I found myself getting involved with Arya, the wife, especially regarding elementary school matters. At first, it was fine, but then I started to feel something was off the first time I invited Arya and her daughter Avery to our house. While the kids were playing and we were chatting, Arya suddenly asked, "Do you have any children's clothes you don't need?" Unwanted clothes? No, we either throw them away or turn them into cleaning rags, I replied honestly. Arya's eyes lit up. What a waste! Next time you have clothes you don't need, give them to me. Avery and Paisley are about the same height, you know. No, that's not it. I didn't like the idea of giving my daughter's used clothes to a neighbor's child. Some might say, just give them away, but I felt uncomfortable seeing the clothes my child wore being worn by the girl next door. You might think I'm being oversensitive and germophobic, but I just couldn't get past that feeling. Arya pressed. You don't have to give anything fancy. Even socks or underwear would be fine. What? I thought, feeling even more repulsed. It was bad enough with clothes, but the idea of giving used socks or underwear, even to a neighbor, was too much. I politely declined, but Arya wasn't the type to give up easily. Her requests grew more audacious. It wasn't just about children's clothes anymore. She started eyeing my clothes, saying, Wow, Haley, your outfit is lovely. Give it to me when you're done with it. Even if she didn't directly say, give it to me, she'd persistently remark, Wow, the jewelry is nice. I want it. Realizing her I wanted implied give it to me, I'd brush her off with, Oh, this? You can find it at any accessory store, and pretended to be oblivious. For my child's sake, I wanted to avoid any trouble, so I thought it's best to keep my distance from Arya. I started changing the times I'd leave the house, paying attention to the sounds from next door to avoid bumping into her. Creepy, right? But it's all to protect my child. I never had any fondness for Arya. In fact, the opposite is true, and I hated having to act like a stalker. But all my efforts were in vain. Arya started showing up unannounced, ringing our doorbell and barging in without warning. Without any prior arrangement, she'd announce her arrival from the other side of the door. My daughter Paisley, unaware of everything, would get excited to play with Avery, making it impossible for me to pretend we weren't home. Reluctantly, I had to let Arya and Avery in more often than I'd like. It's hard when the kids get along so well, you can't just turn them away. And sure enough, as soon as Arya entered, she'd start with her requests. Oh, Paisley's grown a bit, hasn't she? That outfit must be getting small. Let me know when you're getting rid of it. I knew that explaining myself wouldn't get through to her. So I told her straight. Sorry, but we have uses for things even after they're no longer needed, so I can't give them to you. I thought she might apologize or show some remorse, but Arya just pouted and snapped, "Geez, stingy." Really? I thought to myself, isn't it more stingy to not buy your child clothes and beg others for theirs? I wanted to grab her by the collar with an angry face, but I couldn't do that with Paisley and the other kids happily playing nearby. Calm down, Haley, I told myself, using the Lamaze breathing techniques I learned when I gave birth to Paisley, trying to soothe my rage filled heart. Arya laughed at me. "What are you doing, Haley?" But it was all for Paisley's sake. Let her laugh. If Lamaze can help me avoid neighborhood drama, then it's worth it. I then consulted with my husband, Wyatt, and based on his advice, we tried to leave the house when Arya was likely to come over. We went shopping or to the park with Paisley, trying to minimize our interactions with Arya. There was a suggestion to confront her more aggressively, but that would only sour our future relations, especially since our kids are in the same class and we live close by. We needed to maintain a peaceful environment. Wyatt and I finally settled on this approach, and gradually our interactions with Arya decreased. The kids still played together at school, so we weren't cutting off their relationship entirely. That seemed like a fair compromise. I was relieved and thought it was a great success. But then, it happened one day. Paisley told me excitedly about how a friend and their dad went to a new hamburger shop and it was amazing. Turns out, going to this newly opened burger joint with a parent had become a sort of trend among the kids. Seems like knowing about new things is a status symbol at their age. They're growing up so fast. With that in mind, and seeing Paisley's eagerness, I figured a hamburger treat wouldn't hurt, so I took her to the buzzed-about shop. The owner was friendly, and the place had a fresh, clean interior. It's definitely a welcoming spot for families. The taste was, well, average, but Paisley was so happy, and that's what mattered. We were enjoying our burgers when, suddenly, "Haley, what a surprise! Fancy seeing you here!" It was Arya, smiling wide. I was so startled I almost choked on my food. All my efforts to avoid her, and here she was at this exact moment. "Wow, I heard this place was trending among kids, so I thought I'd check it out. Looks like it's true," Arya said casually. That's right. If it's a trend among kids, Arya would have heard about it too. I was naive. But what can I do? I wanted to make my child happy. As I sat there, it began to dawn on me. Why should we have to avoid our own home just to keep away from her? My irritation grew. And then, without even asking, Arya sat down at our table. I wished she'd go sit somewhere else. There were other seats available. "But this works out perfectly." What? I couldn't grasp what Arya was getting at. "Well, since Haley's here, I don't need to order anything." What? "I'll grab a plate. Just give me a bite." Excuse me? Coming to a restaurant and not ordering? That's not the same as sharing with a child who can't finish their meal. Is Arya my child now or what? I wanted to say so much, but was too stunned to speak. "No, I'm almost done and Paisley's been looking forward to the burger. Just order something. It's rude to the restaurant." When I finally managed to say that, Arya again exclaimed, "Huh?" and pouted her lips, probably thinking I was being stingy. But in this situation, isn't Arya the stingy one? "Okay, then just give me the meat for my child's dinner." "That's ridiculous. Impossible. Order your own." The thought of her child eating leftovers from someone else's meal was so revolting. I blurted out my true feelings. Even if I'm not a germaphobe, Isn't this situation universally disgusting? Who just asks for meat? That's a far cry from asking for a bite, right? Oh, that's so mean. Why can't you just give me a piece of meat? It's too stingy to say no when you have such a big one. You never give me anything. It's weird to expect to get something every time. Of course, we're going to eat all the meat. I blurted out a logical response to Arya's ridiculous statement. Seeing Paisley and the other customers staring in shock, I realized I might have gone too far. But Arya was glaring at me with obvious dissatisfaction. Right? I'm not the weird one here, am I? Refusing to give away meat is normal, right? Fine, I'll order myself, Arya declared and went to the counter, placing her order. But she only ordered 5 chicken tenders. Come on, you could make that at home. The chicken tenders, apparently pre-made, were quickly brought to our table. But then, the surprise came. Arya took out a small clear plastic bag from her purse and, to my shock, put the chicken tenders directly into it. A takeout in disguise. And, as I gaped in disbelief, Arya smiled and said, "Thanks for the dinner. Bye." What? I was still stunned when Arya left the restaurant with Avery, leaving the bill behind. She dined and dashed, or rather, took and ran. What do you even call this? The owner, who seemed to have been watching from afar, approached me hesitantly. Who will be paying for this?" It made sense, given we were sitting together. To outsiders, we probably looked like friends. Paisley watched me with concern as I stared at the 2 bills on the table. Arya's chicken tenders were just $6. I made a decision. I didn't want to pay. I wanted to complain, to explain to the owner that I was victimized by a terrible person. I wanted to make a scene. I've been wronged by a horrible person. But causing a scene would only upset Paisley, who had been looking forward to coming here. She might think it was her fault for asking to come. It might even make it awkward for us to come back to this restaurant in the future. No choice then. "Yes, I'll pay," I said with a forced smile to the owner, deciding to cover Arya's bill as well. The next day, I woke up to several texts from my mom friends on the mobile phone. As I've mentioned before, I'm not really into neighborhood relations. My connection with these mom friends isn't particularly close. We're in a very casual relationship. After grade progression at the PDO meeting, we exchanged contacts out of necessity. But our usual interactions are minimal. Why so many texts? Nervously, I opened them. Is this true? It's causing a stir in our mom's friends' WhatsApp group chat? If it's not, you should clear it up for your child's sake. It's spreading among other moms and it's not looking good. Each message was similar with a URL attached. The URL led to Arya's Twitter. I was shocked when I saw her post. "Haley, Paisley's mom, always nags us for clothes and jewelry. The other day she barged in while we were eating burgers and yelled at us to pay for her. Seriously scary. When I refused, she hit my child. It was terrible. Everyone should keep their kids away from that house." What is this? It was Arya who was demanding and wanted the meat. I never hit a child. This was a complete fabrication. But the tweet had been retweeted so many times, spreading the lie. This was bad. I can handle being slandered, but I didn't want it affecting my child. If this continued, other kids might start ignoring Paisley on their parents' orders. What to do? For now, I responded to all the texts saying, "I do not do such things," and explained Arya's past behavior. But I wasn't sure if they'd believe me. After much thought, I decided to keep Paisley home for the day. Luckily, tomorrow was classroom observation and a PTO meeting. I vowed to clear things up then. The next day, I sent Paisley off with a heavy heart, but relieved to see her happy during the classroom observation. I was worried she might have a hard time, but thankfully, the children seemed unaffected by the adults' issues. But this might not be the end of it. Indeed, Arya and her husband Aiden were glaring sharply at us. I was a bit surprised to see them both there, but I couldn't let fear get the better of me. I had to prove my innocence for Paisley's smile. Unfortunately, Wyatt had been on a business trip since the day before yesterday, so he couldn't be here. However, he called this morning, despite being busy, and told me to hang in there and contact him immediately if anything happened. He's such a kind and reliable husband, even from afar. I'm not alone. I'm glad I chose him. After the classroom observation went smoothly, the PTO meeting began. Let's start with the first item. Have any of you parents been experiencing any issues with your children recently? Asked the teacher. I raised my hand and said, I have something I'd like to discuss. Recently, Avery's mom, Arya, has been slandering me baselessly on the internet. I started, causing a stir in the class. It seemed like most people knew about the issue and were curious about its truth. I could hear whispers, wondering if I really hit a child. For a while now, I've been troubled by Arya's behavior. Every time our kids played together, she persistently asked for my child's old clothes and even for things I was wearing. I tried to avoid her as much as possible. She started showing up at my house uninvited, and I had to firmly refuse her requests. But she wouldn't listen. The teacher watched silently, and the other parents looked unsure who to believe. I could have argued with her and ended the relationship, but I didn't want to tear apart our kids' friendship. I thought it was better to endure it as a parent. The parents seemed to understand, nodding in agreement. But Arya didn't consider my feelings at all. She begged for the meat. I was eating at a hamburger shop we coincidentally ran into. There were gasps and murmurs of disbelief at the mention of the meat. Good. It was right to think it was weird. Give me your underwear, socks, old pillows, and finally the meat from your hamburger. There was a visible recoil from the mention of Arya's actions. Aiden, apparently unaware of Arya's past behavior, looked at her coldly. It's not true. Haley is lying. She begged us for things and then hit Avery. Arya protested. Who's lying? We have witnesses, you know. I retorted. Huh? Ignoring Arya's confused look, I turned to the teacher and said, Please, can you call him in? The teacher nodded and went to the hallway, then returned with a man. Some people recognized him and gasped. Yes, he was the owner of the hamburger shop. He was the only witness to that day's events, and I had asked him to come here, despite it being a huge favor. Yesterday, I visited the hamburger shop again and explained the situation, begging him to come to the PTO meeting. I knew it was an odd request and was prepared for him to refuse. However, the owner readily agreed to help, saying, I was a bit concerned about the atmosphere from an outsider's perspective, and you graciously paid for the meal that was supposed to be unpaid. It was thanks to you that the other customers didn't feel uncomfortable. I don't mind helping out. I had already informed the teacher, ensuring that the owner could enter the school without any issues. The owner left his newly opened shop in his wife's care to come here and testify about what happened that day. In front of everyone, he described how Arya had appeared while I was eating, begged for meat, and left without paying for her chicken tenders after being refused. The parents were appalled by his words, and their glances towards Arya turned icy. It's not true. Besides, it's her fault for not giving me anything. No clothes, no jewelry, no underwear. What will she give? Neighbors should share used items. It's win-win. Saves us both the trouble of disposing of stuff and saves money. Despite her denials, Arya admitted to begging. Aiden clearly felt disgusted with her. It seemed no one doubted me anymore. We're neighbors, right? It's normal to be friendly and share things, right? It benefits our children too. Don't judge things from Arya's perspective. I don't want to be friends with someone demanding. And I don't find disposing of things to be a hassle. Being begged for used items by you is the real pain, not win-win at all. My anger spilled out more harshly than I intended. Think about your child. If I had given in and given you stuff, Avery would end up with hand-me-downs from her friends. You wouldn't have liked that as a child, right? What you're doing is making your child sad. If you want used items so badly, alter your own clothes for her. Before relying on other parents, make sacrifices yourself. That's what a parent does. Some applause broke out as I spoke. I knew I wasn't wrong, but now I felt confident. This issue is definitely a case of slander by Arya. Last night, the security camera footage from the owner's restaurant confirmed the situation. There was no act of hitting a child. Huh? Arya's eyes widened at the teacher's words. Lying isn't acceptable, Arya. You surely teach your child not to lie, right? If a parent does that, it sets a bad example. Please be a responsible mother for your child. Acting all high and mighty. For a moment, Arya's shoulders shook with anger. However, the parent's chuckles at her expense seemed to embarrass her, and her face turned red as she looked down. Arya, this is too much. It's not you who's embarrassed by lying, it's me and Avery. Everyone's laughing at us. Don't just eat and run without paying. But I just wanted to save a bit on living expenses. Before saving on living expenses, we're the ones floating in embarrassment here. Are you saying my salary isn't enough? Oh dear. The prices were now openly quarreling. I should have noticed earlier, I admit, but who would think to do such things? I can't even begin to reprimand you. Think about common sense for the sake of our child. Why? Why is everyone blaming me? He's also... Arya started to make a scene, crying loudly, but Aiden pulled her out of the classroom. Thus, with the help of the hamburger shop owner, the teacher, and the other parents, my innocence was finally proven. 5 years later, at the PTO meeting, I made it clear that Avery and Arya are different individuals and should not be seen as the same. Thankfully, Arya's child didn't suffer any consequences. Paisley remained friends with Avery, so I thought it would just be Arya and I who drifted apart. But then, I found out from the landlord, who asked if everything was okay, that Arya had been demanding things from other apartment residents. Despite repeated warnings from the landlord to refrain from excessive neighborhood relations due to complaints, Arya continued her behavior. Within a year of the incident, the Price family was evicted from the apartment. Until elementary school, they relied on Arya's grandparents to avoid transferring Avery to another school. But from middle school, Avery went to a completely different school. It must have been hard for them to stay, especially after it came out that Arya had been demanding things from other mom friends too, earning the nickname Demanding Monster Mom among the parents. No wonder they didn't feel comfortable here, but it's all on her. While I feel sorry for children caught in their parents' wake, Arya's situation was a result of her own actions. Meanwhile, our family is still living in the same apartment, enjoying a peaceful life. I wondered if Paisley would be sad about Avery moving away. Aren't you sad that Avery moved? No, not really, Mom. Actually, I was a bit troubled because Avery kept asking for pens, jackets, sweaters. I'm a little relieved she's gone. It turns out Avery also had a demanding nature, so Paisley was actually relieved about the move. Another good thing that happened recently, Wyatt got promoted. His business trips and overtime decreased, our income increased, and we're all happier. For the first time in years, we could take a family vacation. Wyatt even picked up baking as a hobby on his days off, and Paisley started joining him, kneading out her exam stress into the dough. I'm so glad she didn't turn into one of those teenagers who can't stand their dad. Our life didn't turn into one of those dramatic stories where everything goes perfectly. The father becomes a successful CEO, or there's a bitter divorce. But living peacefully, without the fear of Arya's demanding nature, has been our greatest happiness. Oh, and there's one more good thing. Paisley has started winning awards for her piano playing. With Wyatt's increased income, we're thinking of moving to a house where piano playing won't disturb anyone. It's not a flashy high-rise apartment move, but in a way, it's our own happy ending, right? Everyone, cherish the small joys in life.
I'm curious how poor you had to be, self-employed as a single mother. When my mom was asked what she does for a living by her fiancé Ken's father, my mom replied, "I'm self-employed." When she responded, Smith's family began to laugh as if they couldn't stop themselves. Andy, Ken's younger brother, looked at me with utter contempt. "That is not how I want to live. I can't imagine a life like that for those of us in the medical profession." Ken's mother is frowning. "I don't care what they think of me. You can't even make fun of my mother, who raised me by herself. I'm not going to forgive them. I'm not going to become a family with these people." Just as I was about to raise my voice, my mother, who is usually calm, stood up and said, "I see. I will withdraw his recommendation for medical school." Her tone was cold. "I'm Jane Brown. This year marks my 26th birthday. I am currently working as a Japanese teacher at a public high school after graduating from the Faculty of Education. And I am living a fulfilling life. After work today, I have a plan to have dinner with my boyfriend, Ken Smith." "Hello, Jane. You must be tired today." "No, you must be tired as well." Ken, my age, graduated from medical school and is now a resident physician. We met in a university club 5 years ago and have been dating ever since. Ken is a sweetheart who is too good for me. He is very kind and faithful. We have helped each other through the difficult times of national exam and job interviews. As the meal was coming to an end and I was thinking about how nice the restaurant was today, Ken said solemnly, "My training period is coming to an end. Will you marry me if I become a full-fledged doctor?" Ken proposed me and gave me a ring. "Ken, I'm overjoyed. I'm confident that you and I will make a happy family. We'll be an excellent couple." I tried hard not to cry and accepted the proposal with joy. I hoped it would put my mother at ease. I was thinking something like that in my mind. Michelle, my mother, had raised me by herself after my father died when I was young. She has always been warm and kind, and she is the ideal mother for me. My mother gave her heartfelt blessing when Ken and I went to tell her about our marriage. "Well, congratulations, Jane. I'm overjoyed that you are marrying such a lovely man. Mom, Thank you for bringing me up until now. I will return the favor from now on, Ken said to my mother, who was happy and crying. Please don't be concerned, Mother. I will make her happy. I was delighted to see him and said to her, I also need to meet Ken's parents. Thank you very much. I went to a boarding school and lived alone in college, so I only see my family every now and then. However, I'm sure they'll be delighted to see you. Make sure to greet your family as well. You will be their relative from now on. Ken comes from a family of doctors. His father owns a private clinic. His mother is a housewife, and he has an 8-year-old younger brother. I hope Ken's family likes me. It will be fine. I'll reserve a table at restaurant for the meeting. Yes, I'm excited to see your family. I was confident that our future will be filled with joy. Yes, until that day. Then, 3 months later, on our meeting day, Ken's family, Smith family, arrived a little later as Ken, my mother, and I waited in the room at the restaurant we had reserved. I'm Jane Brown. This is my mother, Michelle. This is my dad, Tom, and my family owns and operates the Smith Clinic. And this is Kelly, my mother. Andy, my younger brother, is now a junior in high school. Ken's father and mother were well dressed for a family of doctors. Andy, the younger brother, was dressed casually in his high school uniform with brown hair and chewing gum. Ken said, after each of them had introduced themselves, I'm thinking about marrying Jane. Ken's father stroked his mustache and commented, Well, let's start to ask about Jane and her family. I suppose so. We should get to know each other if we are going to be relatives. Ken's mother looked at me as if she judged me. Your father is not here today, is he? I replied, No, I don't have a father. I was raised by Mom. Wow, seriously, there really is such a thing as single mother family. He said this with disgust blatantly in his voice and a wrinkle at the base of his brow with a cross-legged, arrogant attitude. I was upset and replied, What do you mean by that? My mother raised me all by herself, and I am grateful to her. Yes, Andy, you should be careful. Then Andy turned away with an exaggeratedly unhappy look on his face. Kelly asks, Well, Jane, are you a high school teacher, as I heard? Yes, I teach Japanese at a public high school. Hearing this, Smith family members began to talk. A teacher, We don't have a teacher in our family, and a liberal arts major doesn't suit for Ken. You mean you're just a civil servant? You should have been a doctor like him. Being teacher at a public high school sounds poor. I have a recommendation for medical school at a private school, so I don't care. I was stunned, and Ken raised his voice. Jane is a wonderful person, and she works hard with ambition. Don't talk to my fiancé that way. Then Ken's father stared at my mother. I don't forgive you for marriage, a single mother and a teacher. And what kind of work does she do? She seems to try to wear nice clothes. Ken's father asked. My mother answered in a soft voice, Yes, I am self-employed. The members of Smith family looked at each other and started laughing as if they could no longer contain themselves. Your family must have been very poor to be self-employed with a single mother family. Ken's father looked as if he were making fun of us. Hey, seriously, are you running some kind of rundown store? Ken, are you just going to take care of a poor hag and a plain woman who are after your money? Andy looked at us with a look of complete disdain. I don't want to live at the bottom like that. I can't imagine such a life for us from a family of doctors. Ken's mother looked down at us with a lurking brow. I can't believe that she would make fun of me and my mother, who raised me so well by only herself. It is unforgivable. I can't be a part of their family with people like this. Just as I was about to raise my voice, my mother, who is usually calm, stood up and said, I understand what you are saying. I will cancel Andy's recommendation for medical school. Her tone was so cold. After a moment of silence, the members of Smith family looked at each other again, this time bursting into laughter. What kind of authority do you have? How can a self-employed and single mom cancel a recommendation for medical school? Oh my God, have you lost your mind? My mother and I watched it in silence with serious faces. Ken held his eyes and looked pained. What did you say? Tom stopped laughing when he looked at Ken and said, As I introduced to you earlier, mother-in-law's name is Michelle Brown. Does this name sound familiar to you? Ken's father spat. What? I don't know the name of a woman who runs a dreary business with a single mother. Ken's mother looked puzzled. Brown? Andy's high school is called Brown High. What? Andy looked at his mother's face with a sullen expression on his face, and his face became paler and paler. Hey, you're kidding. The chairman? It's the same person who greeted at the entrance ceremony. Huh? Ken's father and mother shouted together. My mother-in-law is the president and manager of the private high school you go. Ken said this in a voice that sounded like he had given up. Yes, after my father's death, my mother ran one of the best private preparatory schools where the sons and daughters of wealthy families attended. And I was working as a teacher in order to get to know the field with the assumption that one day I would take over the school. Why didn't you tell me something important like that? Yes, if we had known that, we would have, Ken's father and mother said shudderingly. Andy was completely shocked and looked pale. Before we could elaborate, you cursed us for being poor mother and daughter. You insulted my precious daughter like that. What else do you have to say? My mother replied quietly. You made fun of them, but if you send Andy to Brown High, you know what I'm talking about. Brown High is a celebrity school, and her mother has never been in need of money. Jane, who was educated as the heir to Brown High, is much better than me. Ken also said. Ken's father and mother started to get angry again. What? Are you making fun of us just because you're the owner of a school? What's the big deal? You're going to revoke my son's recommendation? That's unacceptable. In the case of a recommendation for admission to the medical school, a witness from the chairman of the board is required. He came up as a candidate by the homeroom teacher, but fortunately, I have not approved it yet. It seemed his grades were not good enough for it. My mother says calmly. Then Andy, who had been in a state of stunned, suddenly got down on his knees. I'm begging you, I haven't been studying since I got the recommendation. I want to get into med school. Please, chairman. Ken's mother said in a panic. That's not good. Andy has to take over the Smith clinic with Ken.
Yes, I even gave you bribe, and you can't be joking about cancel the recommendation.
Ken's father makes slips of the tongue.
Bribe?
Ken and I were simply astonished while my mother frowned.
Oh, that wasn't.
Tom was clearly dismayed. Kelly and Andy turned pale. My mother said with harsh, "There are other students with good grades who want to go to medical school. So why did she recommended Andy?" I was wondering, is that what you meant? You were giving money to his homeroom teacher, weren't you?
No, it's a misunderstanding.
We will strictly investigate that matter as well. Of course, everyone involved will be punished. Damn it! Remember that, old hag? Andy's face turned red and he got angry. Don't talk rudely to my mother anymore. She can expel you for bribe. When I said this, Andy glared at me and breathed on his shoulder. Then, as if taking advantage of the situation, Ken's father and mother started to say,
Are you really going to cancel Andy's recommendation? If so, I won't allow you to marry him.
That's right. What are you talking about? You are dating with our son of the hair to the clinic. I won't allow you to marry to this family either. Hey, brother, tell them not to cancel my recommendation. It was Ken who called out to the three hysterically screaming people. I don't want your permission to marry, and I'm breaking off relations with any of you.
What?
Ken's family looked at him with dazed eyes. I have always thought that you have a tendency to brag your family of doctors. What did you say to my fiancé and mother-in-law at that important meeting for marriage? How did you behave? Do you understand?
What the hell are you talking about?
Ken, you stand on their side. Ken's family members were shocked. Ken continued calmly.
I was deeply ashamed when I saw your attitude toward Jane and her mother today. Giving bribe was an insult to the other students who are studying hard to get into medical school. I despise you as a doctor and as a family. I no longer consider you as my family. I will marry Jane and be happy, so please stay out of my life.
Ken's father and mother panicked.
What the hell? Are you saying you want to take over the Smith clinic?
If Andy doesn't get into medical school, there will be no hair. Ken answered without hesitation.
That's right. I will not take over my family's clinic. The university had just asked me if I wanted to stay on at the university as a surgeon. I was thinking that I would rather work as a surgeon in the medical department than in the internal medicine clinic. I could let Andy take over the Smith clinic if he can get into medical school first, though, right? What? Hey, think again.
That's right. Ken, I need you to take over. Brother, I'll have nowhere to work. Say you'll take over. Ken turned to us, ignoring the family's verbalizing.
Jane and Michelle, I am truly sorry for what my family has done. I'm cutting myself off from my family, so please let me marry you.
Ken, don't worry about it. I did not fall in love with you because you are a doctor. I like your personality, and I thought we would be able to support each other in the future. My mother smiled and said to me, Yes, Ken, you are right. I know that you are a kind and honorable young man. It's amazing that you will be a surgeon. I support both of you for your dreams and happiness.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I take Ken's hand and he bows repeatedly. Ken's family looked at us in shock.
Jane and Michelle, let's go now. You don't have to stay here any longer.
Yes, you're right. Let's go, Mother. I'll leave you. We will be in touch about the cancellation of the recommendation and the bribe. With these final words, the sliding doors of the restaurant closed. 1 year later, Ken and I were married and living happily together. Ken ended up staying in the medical department, and although he is a newcomer, he is busy working every day as a skilled surgeon. I am happy to know that Ken is now able to do the work he originally wanted to do and that he is thriving. As for what happened to Smith family, first of all, it was confirmed that the bribe was true. The homeroom teacher who was trying to get Andy recommended for admission to a medical school was punished severely. Andy's recommendation was canceled because of his poor conduct and insufficient grades. After that, he tried to enter medical school as a regular student, but of course, he failed to pass the entrance exam. So he is now studying hard for the medical school entrance exam after graduated from high school.
Andy should know a little bit about hardship and how other people feel.
Ken shrugged his shoulders. The Smith Clinic has been losing patients due to the arrogant attitude of Ken's father, who is actually the director of the clinic. Moreover, Ken's mother was disliked by the nurses and medical clerks because of her bossy attitude. And most of them quit the clinic after rumors started circulating about their bribe. The couple became a target of ridicule from their relatives and the medical profession. And it was finally decided that the clinic would be closing next month. As for me, my mother said, "I want you to take over the school within 10 years. So I am in the middle of studying about how to manage a school corporation. My days are busy, but with the support of my loving mother and husband, my life is going smoothly."
My first time dealing with a serious illness was far more difficult than I could have ever imagined. I was unable to move as freely as I wanted, and breathing was a struggle. My husband, who scorned my ill self, saying, "We don't need a bald and sickly woman," added insult to injury. As my body cried out in pain, my heart cried out too when I discovered my husband's affair. How could he cheat on me in this condition? I will never forgive him. I am determined to recover from this illness and make him regret his actions. My name is Alyssa. I am 30 years old. I was living happily with my husband Bob, whom I married a year ago. One day, on my way home from work, I was suddenly struck with immense physical pain and collapsed at the subway station. I was rushed to the hospital in an ambulance, and after a series of detailed examinations, it was confirmed. I had cancer. Cancer. Me? Is there some kind of mistake? I, who had never had any significant illness before, and was always in good health, devastated by this cancer diagnosis. It's not too late to treat it, but if you don't start treatment immediately, it could be dangerous. I felt like I had been hit over the head at the doctor's words. But wait a minute. I've never had any issues in my company's health screenings before. The regular health screenings at workplaces often fail to detect diseases. It's not unusual for diseases to be detected only after detailed examinations, like tumor markers and brain scans, like in your case. I can't believe it. Please come back with a family member later. We need to discuss treatment plans. The doctor's words made my vision spin. I couldn't believe this was happening to me. When I left the doctor's office, I found a flurry of missed calls from my husband on my phone. It seemed he had been contacted when I was taken to the hospital by ambulance. He had come rushing to the hospital, but he couldn't find me and had been calling me incessantly. When I told him where I was, he came right away. The moment I saw his face, all the tension I had been holding in snapped, and tears started flowing down my cheeks. Bob, what do I do? I have cancer. Cancer? You, Alyssa? You must be joking. I don't want to believe it either, but if we don't start the treatment soon, it might be too late. That's what the doctor said. Unbelievable. Bob, am I going to die? Don't say that. Of course you'll make it. Please, don't talk like that. Surrounded by other patients, I wept uncontrollably in my husband's arms. I didn't have the luxury to worry about other people. Clinging to my husband was the only way I could keep myself together. The next day, we returned to the hospital together to discuss our next steps with the primary physician. As expected, I was hospitalized immediately, and it was suggested I start chemotherapy right away. It's only been a year since we got married. Now my husband and I had to live apart. Despite this, Bob would come to cheer me up almost every day. Alyssa, I'm here. How are you feeling today? Bob, isn't your work hectic? You don't have to force yourself to come. What are you talking about? You're more important than work. But don't worry about it. Oh, I brought you some apples. You like them, don't you? Thanks, but the side effects cause severe nausea. Oh, right, I'm sorry. I also bought you some drinks and jelly. Eat them when you're feeling good. All right, I will. Thanks, Bob. My first experience with being ill was far more difficult than I had imagined, taking a toll on my body. Nausea and fatigue, coupled with the daily sight of massive hair loss. Unable to eat properly, my body quickly thinned down. The days when I thought I should diet now seemed a lifetime ago. I never thought I would lose weight like this. Between the physical and mental distress, I felt like I was falling apart. But that wasn't all. Each time he came to visit, my husband started to look away from me. You've lost a lot of weight. Bob, will you hold my hand? I reached out to my husband, but he flinched slightly, muttered, sorry, and walked out of the hospital room. His attitude left me in shock. Why? Did I do something wrong? Why do I have to go through this? I just wanted to live a normal life with Bob. Not having the luxury to think about others, I was plunged into a daily rut of self-loathing. Why me? Why is this happening to me? I would think this almost every day. However, I was able to continue my struggle with my illness, thanks to my best friend Lily. I couldn't tell anyone else that I had cancer, but I confided in her. As soon as I reached out to her, Lily rushed to the hospital. Ever since then, she's been coming to visit me in the ward whenever she can, despite her busy schedule. Alyssa, I'm here. Oh, Lily, you just came last week, too. Thank you. No worries. I've got time, and talking with you is more fun. Thanks, but I'm just, you know. What do you mean? I mean, I look completely different now, don't I? I've lost all my hair. You must feel uncomfortable around me. Lily sighed heavily and responded in a slightly angry tone. Hey, how long do you think we've been best friends? It's been 10 years. 10 years! Yeah, I know, but I wouldn't stop liking you just because your appearance has changed a little. Don't insult my feelings for you, Alyssa. Lily, so you don't have to worry about it. I just come to see you because I want to, not because I have to. Okay. Anyway, you need to get better soon. Remember that dessert place we wanted to go to? We still haven't been there yet. Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Lily. Lily, always holding my hand, kept encouraging me gently. Thanks to her, I could vent my frustrations that I couldn't share with my husband. Time passed, and about 2 months later, I noticed something. My husband, who used to visit me nearly every day since I was hospitalized, hadn't shown up for a while. Even when I sent him a text on WhatsApp, the only response I got was, "I can't. I'm working late." Feeling really lonely, I decided to give him a call. "Hello, Bob?" Maybe it was because I called during his lunch break, but my husband answered the phone immediately. "Ah, Alyssa, what's up? I haven't seen you at all recently, so I thought, I just wanted to hear your voice." "Ah, I see. Sorry, but I'm a bit busy right now." "What? But isn't it your lunch break now?" "I've got some things to do. Sorry. I have to hang up." "What? Wait, Bob." The phone was hung up on me, and even after sending a message on WhatsApp, I received no response. Why? He used to visit me often. Could it be something happened while I was not around? Just when I started to feel uneasy, my best friend Lily came to me with an unusually gloomy expression. She tried to act as usual, but I could tell immediately that something was different. "Hey, Lily, did something happen?" Upon my inquiry, she showed obvious signs of disturbance. Why? Nothing's wrong." "But you seem different. You seem to be forcing yourself to be cheerful." "There's really nothing. Instead, did you see the news online? That comedian you like." "Lily, please, just tell me." When I looked straight into her eyes, Lily awkwardly averted her gaze. After a moment of silence, she finally opened her mouth. "Actually, I saw something yesterday." "You saw? What did you see?" "I saw your husband walking arm in arm with another woman." "Excuse me?" "So sorry for springing this on you. I might have seen it wrong." My mind raced with panic at her words. Bob having an affair with another woman? No, he wouldn't do that. But he hasn't been visiting the hospital lately. Could it be? I decided to confide in Lily. "Lily, I think what you saw was indeed Bob." "Eh? Why would you say?" "Bob hasn't visited the hospital in these past 2 weeks. Plus, he lied to me about working late yesterday." "No way. I can't believe Bob would do such a thing." "I called his office yesterday for the first time in a while, but he cut me off, saying he was busy. If he was cheating, that would make sense." "Alyssa." "Lily, there's something I want to ask you." I decided to ask Lily to investigate my husband on my behalf. So she visited a detective agency and requested an investigation into my husband. 1 week later, seeing Lily's face after a long time, it was evident from her somber expression that the investigation results were not good. Struggling to start the conversation, I thanked her with a forced smile. "Lily, you've been investigating, right?" "Thank you. Can I see it?" "Alyssa, maybe you're better off not seeing this." "That's okay. I'm already expecting the worst." "But it's okay." I took the envelope from Lily and checked its contents. There were photos of my husband holding hands with another woman, kissing on the street. I couldn't help but feel a rush of anger, my hand shaking as I held the photos. He's been doing this behind my back while I've been sick. I sent a message to my husband on WhatsApp saying, "I need to talk to you at the hospital," and forcibly sent the worried Lily home. That evening, when my husband visited my hospital room, I confronted him directly. "I'll just ask straightforwardly, Bob. You're cheating, aren't you?" He seemed surprised for a moment, but then defiantly retorted, "So what if I am? And what if I've been having an affair? Are you going to blame me?" "Just tell me why. Why would you do such a thing?" "Why? Isn't it obvious? I don't love you anymore." Just like that, in a matter of weeks? Why would you suddenly, in response to my question, he threw back the cruelest words imaginable. "Have you looked at yourself in the mirror lately?" "What?" "You've washed your hair. Your eyes are sunken in, and you look sickly. To be blunt, you look like a ghost. Where's the charm of the woman I used to know? How can you say that? I don't want a woman who's bald and skeletal. That's why. Are you satisfied? With that, Bob averted his gaze from me. The man sitting across from me was a stranger, not the Bob I knew. Ignoring my silence, he pulled a piece of paper from his bag and shoved it in front of me. It was unmistakably divorce papers. Are you serious about this? Of course. Like I said, I don't have an ounce of love for you anymore. There's no point in us being together. But why? Listen, you've lost your charm as a woman. It's a waste of life to be married to someone like you. Do you plan on keeping me tied down to this hospital room forever? For both our sakes, please sign the divorce papers quickly. In that moment, the last sliver of hope I had held on to shattered. This man was no longer the Bob I knew. Staying married to him would only diminish my self-worth. With that realization, I picked up a pen with trembling hands and scribbled my signature. I thrust the signed divorce papers at Bob, speaking in an unusually low voice. Happy now? We're strangers from this point on. Don't ever show your face to me again. With that, Bob snorted in a taunting manner. I wouldn't want to be with a woman like you, even if you begged me. Enjoy your life with your illness. Good luck with your treatment. I hope you realize you won't find happiness this way. The last thing I need is a lecture from a sick woman like you. Goodbye. With those words, Bob left the hospital room. I lay back on the bed, staring blankly at the stark white ceiling. Ah, what a short-lived marriage that was. What on earth was my life with him all about? Is this what married life is inevitably like? While I felt an enormous void inside of me, the feeling of not having to deal with such a jerk ever again was also substantial. With that in mind, I felt a bit lighter. 2 years later, having endured life with illness, I was finally discharged from the hospital with Lily's support. Now I'm living alone in an apartment, and though it's part-time, I've managed to return to work. On Lily's recommendation, I've also started using social media. By sharing my changing appearance on social media, I was able to connect with others who had overcome cancer. I was finally starting to regain a fulfilling life. It was one day like any other when my ex-husband called my cell phone. Hello? Ah, Alyssa. You've been discharged, huh? Good for you. And why do you care? And who told you? I saw it on your social media. You were out somewhere the other day, right? Sneaking a look at your ex-wife's social media is creepy. Can you stop it, please? Don't be like that. I was just calling because I was worried. That's fine then. Goodbye. Just as I was about to hang up, he shouted over the phone, Wait, hold on. What? Well, where are you living now? Why would I need to tell you that? The thing is, I need your help. What? After we divorced, my affair was exposed at work and I got fired. I borrowed money to get by, and now my debts have gotten out of hand. Is that so? And? Now I'm about to be kicked out of the apartment we used to live in, so please, I need your help. What about your mistress? You have a girlfriend, right? I broke up with her a long time ago. The moment I lost my job, she disappeared. Can you believe that? As if he was saying, I'm not in the wrong. It's the company that fired me, and the woman I cheated with. His attitude reeked of denial, and it left me absolutely disgusted. This man had not grown at all. I told him straight out, I'm sorry, but I have no intention of dealing with you anymore. What? Why? We were married once, weren't we? What are you talking about? We're divorced. We're just strangers now, aren't we? Don't mess with me. Do you know how much I supported you after you fell sick? You should repay that debt. Debt? Yeah, that's right. I was the one who was there for you, supporting your mental health when you lost all your hair. And now, you won't even help me when I'm in trouble? Had he forgotten that he was the one who cheated on me? His selfish attempts to paint me as the bad guy left me shaking with anger. Enough. Who do you think you are? Who was the one who cheated on me while I was battling my illness? Don't give me that crap over a little cheating. it was because you were too pitiful to look at. What? I don't know anything about that. I was in the depths of despair, suffering from illness, and then you betrayed me and pushed me further down. Do you understand that? What the? Calm down, will you? Calm down? How do you expect me to do that? How many more selfish things do you need to say to feel satisfied? How many more feelings do you need to trample on to feel satisfied? There's no way I'm going to help garbage like you. If anything, you should suffer more. Wait a minute. I was hoping we could get back together. What? Who said anything about getting back together? I don't want anything to do with someone who can betray people as easily as you do. I've made up my mind. I'm going to sue for emotional distress. Emotional distress? He probably didn't expect to be sued for emotional distress after calling me so casually. My ex-husband began to panic. Well, wait a minute. Emotional distress? I told you, I don't have any money right now. I don't care. It's none of my business. Hey, Alyssa, shut up. Don't you dare call my name so casually. I'll never forget what you did to me, and I'll never forgive you. The scars of your cheating while I was pregnant and fighting disease will never fade. I'll squeeze every penny out of you for emotional distress and make you suffer even more. Well, wait. Help me. I ignored his pleas and hung up the phone. I blocked his number so I wouldn't have to hear his voice again and headed straight to the lawyer's office. The evidence of his affair that Lily had found that day was, of course, still valid. Thanks to that, I was able to demand a significant amount of damages from my ex-husband and his mistress. As a result, they found themselves deep in debt, sinking as far as they could possibly go. My ex, who had been fired from his previous job, seemed to have a hard time finding steady employment and apparently had to work multiple part-time jobs. Rumor has it that he's been living on the run, trying to avoid debt collectors. On the other hand, I'm living a peaceful life by myself. Recently, I've been able to work more hours and have started to spend money on my hobbies. My current excitement is a trip to Hawaii with Lily next month. I've caused her quite a bit of trouble, so I'm covering all the travel expenses. But to be honest, I'm planning to use the damages from his infidelity for the trip. LOL. Being married isn't the only path to happiness. What really matters is having friends who genuinely care about you. I intend to cherish the best friend who helped me during that time for the rest of my life.
As a doctor's wife, you ought to dress properly. That's what my sister-in-law said to me, looking down on me. I guess to her I'm a lesser being. My name is Emily, and I work as a nurse in a general hospital. I met my husband, Ethan, at this very hospital 5 years ago. He was a medical intern back then, and as we cared for each other amidst our busy schedules, we grew close and eventually started dating. Although we often couldn't find time to see each other due to work, after 5 years of dating, he proposed to me this year. Ethan comes from a family of doctors. I wonder if they'll accept me. Today, we're visiting his parents to formally announce our engagement, and I can't help but feel anxious and a bit weak. Hey, have confidence in yourself. After all, I chose you. If anything happens, I'll be there for you. Ethan reassured me, and I felt a bit relieved. Ethan's father runs his own practice, and his brother is the successor. His mother and sister-in-law are homemakers. Even Ethan's aunt and uncles are doctors, making it a typical family of medical professionals. On the other hand, I lost my father at a young age and was brought up in a single-mother household. Wanting to become independent as soon as possible to help my mother, I decided to become a nurse. I studied at a public university thanks to a scholarship. I'm grateful to my mother, who raised me, but I'm worried about the inevitable comparisons that'll be made. Having heard about how strict his parents were, I was incredibly nervous by the time we arrived at Ethan's house. To add to that, not only his parents, but also his brother and his wife and other relatives were there, as Ethan had announced he was bringing his fiancée. After introducing myself to each one, I bowed deeply. "So, Emily, what do you do for a living?" asked my mother-in-law, noticing my anxiety. "I work as a nurse. I met Ethan when he was a medical intern." As I spoke, Amy, the wife of Ethan's brother, interjected. A nurse? Are you aiming for a more privileged marriage? She asked, with a hint of mockery, which caused me to shake my head frantically in denial. No way, that's not it at all. As I tried to explain myself, Ethan's uncle muttered, There are nurses who aim for medical interns. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. What about your family? What does your father do? Amy asked, and my voice faltered. My father passed away when I was young. Seeing Amy's knowing look, I felt lost for words. So you were raised by a single mother? I've heard of women who marry doctors for money, she said with an exasperated sigh. Ethan, sensing my distress, raised his voice in frustration. Amy, isn't it rude to say such things at our first meeting? Emily is a hard-working person. She didn't want to burden her mother, so she put herself through public university. I've never seen a nurse as dedicated as her. His words made me blush. Amy apologized with a smile, but her eyes didn't hold any warmth. I'm not ashamed of being raised in a single-parent household, and I certainly didn't marry Ethan for his money. But feeling unable to stand up for myself, I was on the verge of tears. Then Ethan's quiet father spoke. It's impressive that you made it to a public university. Our sons weren't the sharpest tools in the shed. Well, we basically bought their way in with money. He said it with a straight face, but it was clear that this was his father-in-law's idea of a joke. Ethan and his brother-in-law had always been top performers since their school days. You know, neither my brother nor I have fully grown up yet. With this exchange between the father-in-law and Ethan, the tense atmosphere loosened. Speaking of not growing up, Amy, Ethan's sister-in-law, seemed to be stuck in her parents' shadow. The brother-in-law shot a quick glance at Amy and made a sharp comment. Amy apparently graduated from a prestigious all-girls school. It's a school where, even without much academic achievement, one could enroll if they had enough money. She came from a wealthy family, and her marriage to the brother-in-law was arranged, it seems. His comment must have rubbed her the wrong way. Amy glared at the brother-in-law. Don't be rude. By lineage, I outrank you. Don't compare me with a child from a single-mother household. She then turned her harsh stare towards me. I had heard from Ethan that the brother-in-law and Amy didn't have the best relationship. Amy's high and mighty attitude apparently irked the brother-in-law. What's more, for some reason, Amy had suspicions about her husband's fidelity and would throw fits. She suspected that one of the administrative staff at the clinic might be his mistress and kept blaming the brother-in-law. The clinic where the father-in-law is the director isn't that big. There are only about 3 administrative staff. Though all 3 of them are young and attractive, Ethan insists that his brother wouldn't be foolish enough to get involved with an employee. Apparently, she misinterpreted some business emails between him and the staff. I never expected to witness a marital spat upon first meeting them. While I was feeling flustered, my mother-in-law stepped in to help. Stop it. Arguing like this is unsightly. Chastened by their mother-in-law, the brother-in-law and Amy quieted down. Turning to me, the mother-in-law spoke softly. There will be times when you face harsh words from those around you. Emily, are you prepared to marry into a family of doctors? Faced with her question, I nodded firmly. There had been plenty of times when I was envied by senior nurses after starting to date Ethan. Ethan also experienced teasing from his colleagues about dating a nurse. Despite it all, we didn't lose heart, and our bond deepened. All I can think about is marrying Emily. I hope you can all watch over us. No one objected, and they congratulated our upcoming marriage. Considering how strict his parents are, I expected them to object. But contrary to my expectations, both the father-in-law and the mother-in-law kindly accepted us. The only one who seemed unsatisfied was Amy, which concerned me. With a successful completion of our marriage introduction, we got registered. Our relationship didn't change just because we got married. The one thing that changed was the frequent invitations from Amy. Let's go shopping tomorrow. I'll teach you how to dress appropriately as a doctor's wife. Amy often used the phrase doctor's wife. I was initially surprised at her invitation to go shopping, especially after her condescending attitude at our first meeting. But observing her, it seemed like she wanted to assert her dominance over me. She would buy and flaunt clothes that were beyond my pay grade. Even today, as we went to the boutique, Amy was buying loads of branded clothes. Seeing the amount, I couldn't help but marvel at how much her husband was earning. I've told you before, why don't you quit nursing? Supporting a busy doctor husband is the wife's duty, isn't it? While having tea after shopping, Amy chimed in. Here we go again, I thought. She keeps telling me every time we meet that I should become a homemaker. I consider nutrition. I've never used prepackaged meals. My floors don't have a speck of dust. Are you doing your part as a doctor's wife? Sure, sometimes we rely on ready-made curry pouches and the dust accumulates. It's made me doubt myself, and I've talked about it with Ethan. I asked if I should quit nursing and become a homemaker. Ethan, with a serious face, reassured me. I want you to continue nursing. I fell in love with you for your vibrant work attitude. He had told me before that he was smitten at first sight, seeing me treat patients with kindness. Remembering Ethan's words, I replied, I have no intention of quitting nursing. Ethan understands that too. At that, Amy snickered. Really? I'm sure a low-bred woman like you will be cheated on soon enough. You're only good for your brains after all. Amy suddenly started to look down on me. I won't stand her belittling my household. I lost my temper and gave her a piece of my mind. So your only claim to fame is that you come from a rich family, right? You don't even get along with your husband. Maybe you should worry less about being cheated on and try trusting him more. As soon as I'd said it, I knew it was too late. Amy's face turned beet red with anger, and she looked like a fiery demon. How dare you? A woman like you doesn't belong in this house. With that, Amy stormed off. When I told Ethan what happened, he burst out laughing. You told off my annoying sister, good. She'll cool down after a while. I had regretted what I'd done, but now I felt better. In fact, I was even a little relieved that the invitations to go shopping and tea had ceased. You know, Amy always acts so high and mighty in every boutique. Is she a regular customer or something? Ethan shrugged it off, saying she just loved shopping, but it was on my mind. Hello, I've got something I want to ask. I dialed up a friend. I thought the next time I would see Amy would be months away, at New Year's, but mother-in-law contacted me the next day about a dinner party. Father-in-law was turning 60, and she invited us to celebrate with a high-end sushi meal. The thought of seeing Amy was unpleasant, but I wanted to celebrate father-in-law's birthday. I figured she must have forgotten by now, and I was looking forward to dinner. When I arrived at the restaurant, I saw brother-in-law and his wife approaching. As soon as Amy spotted me, she marched right over, her face stern. Why are you here? Didn't I say you don't belong in this house? Brother-in-law and Ethan hastily tried to calm the aggressively confronting Amy. You better remember what you said. How dare a poor, low-bred woman like you talk back? Amy's anger continued to escalate. People like you, raised in a single-mother household, are considered lower class. I absolutely refuse to dine with someone of your status. Get out. Brother-in-law looked exasperated as Amy caused a scene right in front of the restaurant. Then a cold voice echoed through the commotion. Then go home, you, came a frosty voice. It was mother-in-law. She must not have expected mother-in-law was watching. Huh? Amy murmured softly, glancing over her shoulder. I'm terribly embarrassed by this spectacle outside the store. Mother-in-law's words were met with nods from everyone present. I only argued back because Emily was being rude. I support my husband so much. Amy seemed to go into hysterics, her voice rising again. It's Ethan's fault for bringing such a low-status woman into the family in the first place. Divorce her, even now." Her words were utter nonsense. Naturally, Ethan wore a bewildered expression. "Please, don't get more hysterical than this. It's your fault. You insult my education." The fight between brother-in-law and Amy had officially started. Mother-in-law intervened once more. "I had planned to ask about this later, but if you're going to make such a fuss, I'll ask now. Amy, you're hiding something, aren't you?" At mother-in-law's words, the arguing voices instantly went silent. "Hiding something? What do you mean?" Amy's voice trembled slightly, though she was trying to stay calm. "Emily told me about your shopaholic tendencies." Amy's face turned ashen. "You always talk about a certain department store. One of my friends works there." She had been puzzled about Amy's ability to buy so many brand name clothes. At first, she thought brother-in-law was very open-minded. But would he really let his wife, with whom he didn't get along, freely make such high-priced purchases? Something seemed off. She thought that maybe Amy was receiving an allowance from her wealthy parents. But Amy had proudly claimed that since marrying brother-in-law, she had never asked her parents for money. According to Ethan, brother-in-law was indifferent to money and let Amy handle his salary and savings. Perhaps that's why Amy had free rein to spend. According to mother-in-law's friend, Amy was a frequent shopper at the store and would sometimes spend hundreds of thousands in a day. But her attitude was so arrogant that the staff found her annoying. "Also, Amy, aren't you cashing in on a family credit card?" This was just a guess, there was no proof. But it seemed to hit the mark as Amy turned even paler. "How did you—" She had figured Amy, with her lavish spending habits, was also borrowing money. "You don't even understand the value of money, yet you flaunt your power around town. Don't you feel ashamed as a doctor's wife?" Amy was rendered speechless by mother-in-law pointing out her shopaholic tendencies. "The staff has also complained about your haughty attitude." Even father-in-law, who had been silently listening, couldn't bear it any longer. Amy would wait until father-in-law wasn't around, then visit the clinic to complain about poor cleanliness and scold the staff. The way she treated the 3 office clerks she suspected of having an affair with her husband was appalling. She even demanded that they quit if they had the audacity to flirt with him. Upon learning the real situation, her father-in-law feared that the staff would quit if things continued this way. When my brother-in-law discovered that she had been squandering money, he was livid. "How much did you borrow? Tell me everything." Amy just stood silent, not even bothering to apologize. Seeing this, her husband's patience snapped. "You high and mighty woman, I want a divorce. Pay back all the money you've spent." Amy, who didn't expect a divorce, desperately pleaded that she didn't want to split up, but nobody, not her in-laws, nor her husband, nor Ethan, was willing to listen to her. Then she turned to me with a plea in her voice. "Emily, as a fellow wife, you understand how I feel, right?" I couldn't help but laugh at her audacity. "Are you asking for help from a woman you've always looked down on because of her social status? Why don't you ask your wealthy parents for help?" After I bluntly told her off, Amy's head dropped in defeat, and so Amy and her husband decided to get a divorce. Even when she handed in her divorce application, Amy was still causing a fuss. Eventually, her parents came to take her back home. The money she'd spent over time amounted to millions, and Amy, unable to pay it back, went crying to her parents. They paid off her debts, but she's now the talk of the town as the woman who spent her husband's money. It's going to be hard for her to remarry. Her parents are so embarrassed that they're keeping her indoors for now. They've confiscated her cash and credit cards, too. Amy, who used to relieve stress through shopping, is now locked up in her room, I heard. I never really understood why she tried to assert dominance over me. Despite coming from a wealthy family, her brother-in-law once told me that Amy had an inferiority complex about her education. She was irritated when I, a clever woman with a degree from a public university, was praised by relatives for marrying Ethan. Seeing Amy, I understood that being rich doesn't necessarily mean being happy. Then I had a question for my mother-in-law. Why did you allow me to marry into your family? I thought marrying into a doctor's family required a good family background. Upon my hesitant question, my mother-in-law answered with a smile. Actually, I also married your father-in-law, a medical intern back then, when I was a nurse, before our children were born. She said she had faced a lot of opposition to her marriage from her family because she was a nurse. She didn't want her sons to experience the same hardships, so she arranged a marriage for her eldest son with a girl from a good family. However, her eldest son, who married Amy, didn't seem happy at all. He looked more like he was tired of married life. That's why she wanted her second son to be with the person he loved and was willing to approve it from the beginning. It was a surprise when my second son brought home a nurse. It seems blood doesn't lie, huh? My mother-in-law and I shared a chuckle. From then on, I worked as a nurse in my father-in-law's clinic. I guess he hired me because he liked the strength I showed by not letting Amy's nasty comments get to me. My salary is higher than before, and working close to my beloved family makes me feel really blessed.
My name is Charlotte. I'm currently 23, living with my family while looking for a job. Today, my mother seems a little on edge as my older brother Henry is bringing his girlfriend home. She's been restless all day, cleaning every corner of the house. Now it's also making me a bit anxious. We lost our father when we were young, so it's just been us and our mother. Whenever she smiles at my father's picture on the mantelpiece, it makes me feel warm inside. I wonder what she's like. Apparently, she's a very sweet girl. Just then, the doorbell rang. My mother goes to greet them, and Henry and his girlfriend entered our house. Henry's girlfriend is a striking beauty, and he introduces her, blushing slightly. Nice to meet you. I'm Emmy. Our mother is visibly excited about Henry bringing such a beautiful woman home. We all sit down and start making small talk over tea. What do you do, Charlotte? At the moment, nothing. I'm job hunting. For a moment, I felt as if Emmy glared at me for a split second. When my mother left her seat to refill our teacups and Henry went to the restroom, we were left alone. I sensed Emmy scan me from my head to toe, like she was measuring my worth. Feeling the tense atmosphere, I thought of lightening the mood with a different topic. I heard you've never worked before. Is that true? Don't you feel embarrassed to be living off your mother at 23? Are you not planning to work? How do you even support yourself now? She bombarded me with questions before I could even change the subject. Seems like her sharp gaze that I sensed earlier wasn't just my imagination. She must be worried about me being jobless. She's considering getting married to my brother, so her being worried isn't out of the ordinary, I guess. I do plan to work. Plan to? Do you think you can get a job that easily? You don't look like someone who can easily land a job. And will you continue living here even after you start working?
What are you two talking about?
Just some girls talk. The moment Henry returns, Emmy blatantly changes her attitude. I suppose it could be seen as a typical conversation between women. She glares at me threateningly, gripping my brother's arm. It's clear we won't get along, and I guess she's not interested in getting along with me either. I started cleaning up with my mother after the two of them left. She's a cheerful girl, wasn't she? Yeah. I can't believe that Henry's getting married to a girl as beautiful and as sweet as her. Yeah. Seeing my mother happy, I couldn't bring myself to tell her about Emmy's behavior when we were alone. I'm not sure if she treated me like that because she didn't like me, or if that's just how she is. Is it because I'm not as attractive as her? Should I talk to Henry about this? But I don't want to cause a rift between them because of me. Maybe I'm just overthinking. We still don't know each other well, and things might change once I start working. The reason I'm not working is because I've been taking care of my grandmother. After earning my nursing certification from a vocational school, I decided to take care of my grandmother instead of working. Being raised by a single mother, my relatives and grandmother always took good care of us. I wasn't upset about having to take care of my grandmother after graduation. In fact, I always wanted to look after her. Everyone was supportive and appreciative, and it wasn't just on me. My grandmother passed away a few months ago. After sorting out my grandparents' paperwork and getting my driver's license, I began job hunting. Fortunately, I found a job quickly. Then I got a message from Henry saying, "I'm planning to marry Emmy in 6 months." I hadn't spoken to Emmy since their visit, and the thought of having to deal with her in the future was daunting. My mother attended a meeting between both families and returned with a smile, saying her parents were nice and it was a pleasant meeting. Henry is busy with work, so they'll register their marriage first, but they plan to hold the wedding ceremony in 6 months. The awkwardness between Emmy and I remained, but Henry's marriage was still a great news to me. My mother and I went shopping and bought matching dishware as a gift. The wedding day approached. I received a text from Henry. Emmy wanted to hang out with me, just the two of us, and asked when I was available. Although I wanted to refuse, I also wanted to improve my relationship with Emmy, so I told him when I was off and agreed to have her over. I would have preferred a day when my mother was also free, but unfortunately we didn't have any day off together for the next couple of weeks. When I told my mother about it, she went out and bought my favorite food for me to have with Emmy. I convinced myself that Emmy was trying to motivate me to get a job since I was unemployed at the time. Then the day arrived. I saw my mother off to work and waited for Emmy. When the doorbell rang, I opened the door to find Emmy standing there with a sour look on her face. "Hey, come in." As I opened the door for her to enter, she let out a big sigh. "You bought a car, right? Henry told me. Can't you be considerate and come to pick me up? You're a grown woman now. You should know to be considerate. Also, the dishes you sent really have bad taste." I realized that she was referring to the gift I sent for getting their marriage certificate. I reaffirmed that she didn't like me and I didn't feel comfortable with her. Why did Emmy want to meet me in the first place? Emmy looked around the house, looking curious. "What exactly are you here for?" "I thought we should have a talk. You seem slow, so I figured I should just tell you up front." "A talk?" "I need to know when you're moving out. You started working, right? How about living on your own? You've had enough time being pampered. It's time to stand on your own 2 feet. The condescending tone was irritating, but I suppressed my anger. "It's none of your business, isn't it?" "You're so dense. I married your brother. I know a say in this household. I want to raise our child here. It's convenient here, and there are many places around to shop within walking distance. But I absolutely do not want to live with you. I fear living with you might turn me dull and gloomy. This house will eventually belong to your brother, so could you leave as soon as possible?" Did Henry say he wanted to live together in this house? I can't imagine him wanting that. "Even if he doesn't want it, if I ask, your brother will do it for me." She was incredibly selfish and self-centered. I was shocked. The thought of having to deal with her from now on gave me a headache. "I don't understand why Henry chose someone like you. Does he know this side of you?" "Sounds like you're jealous of me. Your brother, you see, is head over heels for me. He listens to whatever I say. Your mother, although plain, seems obedient, and we need someone to do the housework. I finally snagged a man with a good income." It puzzled me why only I had to leave, but it seemed like Emmy wanted to keep my mother as a housemaid. Emmy's way of speaking was infuriating. I'm usually not the type to get mad quickly, so I didn't know how to express my anger. "Hey, what's this? This bag is of that high-end brand." She picked up my bag that I had left in a corner of the living room. "Please don't touch it. It's not something a jobless person should be carrying around." She began to rummage through my bag. "Hey, stop that." "This watch looks pretty expensive. It'll probably suit me better." She caught sight of a watch in my bag and picked it up. "Give it back. That was a gift from my grandmother." I forcefully took back both my bag and the watch that Emmy was admiring. "I knew it. We can't be friends. Please leave." "Sure thing." Instead of causing more trouble, she quickly left with a smirk on her face. Still, why do I have to be treated like this? I cried alone, wondering what I had done to deserve this. That night, my brother and mother returned home. They brought Emmy with them. "Charlotte, what were you thinking? Emmy told us you started a fight and treated her like a wicked stepsister." "Emmy said that the moment she tried to pick up the bag you dropped, you shoved her away." My brother shouted in anger, and my mother scolded me. "I didn't even touch her. I just took back my bag. She was the one being mean. I did my best to get along with her." I stood my ground, but "It's my fault. It seems Charlotte doesn't like me. I'm often disliked by girls my age. I guess Charlotte feels the same about me. She's upset because she feels like I've stolen her brother, right? It's my fault for not being considerate of her feelings." I was mad at Emmy, but she was crying next to me. I was clearly the bad guy here. "Apologize to Emmy, Charlotte." Even if there was a misunderstanding, you should apologize first. Even while pretending to cry, she was staring at me with her big black eyes. It seemed like she was making a face that said, "In your face." I felt unheard and lonely, with neither my brother nor my mother listening to my side of the story. They both urged me to apologize. "You guys really think I'm the type to pick on Emmy? I see. You guys won't believe me at all. They wouldn't hear me out at all. If I truly despised you, I wouldn't have sent you guys any gift at all." Anger and sadness mixed within me, and clutching only my purse, I dashed out of the house. Since my aunt's house was close by, I ran into her place with tears running down. "What happened, Charlotte? Why are you crying so much? What's going on?" My aunt let me into her house, rubbing my back as she listened to what I had to say. "Oh my, she sounds like the epitome of a nasty woman." Even my mother and brother, they don't believe me. If I go back, Emmy will be there. I don't want to go home anymore. They must have been convinced by her. If you don't want to go home, you can stay here. I'm just by myself here anyway. Do you believe me, Auntie? Of course, you're always kind and considerate of others. You would never say or do things to hurt others. As I was talking with my aunt, my phone began to vibrate. It was a call from an unsaved number. I had a bad feeling about it and was hesitant to answer, but my aunt said, "It might be that woman. Why don't you try answering it?" So I nodded, put the call on speaker so my aunt could hear, and picked up.
"Hello, can you hear me?"
Probably she got my number from Henry when she said she'd come to visit. I wasn't up for it, but decided to speak anyway.
"Where are you?"
My aunt put her index finger to her lips, signaling me to keep quiet. "At a hotel." I responded with the bare minimum.
"Well, do you get it now? No one believes you. Even your mother believes me. I'm so lucky to have such a kind mother-in-law." Since then, they've both been comforting me. They were so angry with you, saying what a terrible person you are.
The revelation of Emmy's true nature triggered my aunt, her eyes wide with delight. I was upset about the fact that my mother and brother didn't believe me, but seeing my aunt react this way made me want to expose more of Emmy's true side. That's fine. There's no denying that I'm two-faced. Admitting my own faults made me feel less guilty and ready to fight back. Having my aunt right next to me mentally helped me great. "Emmy, you mentioned you wanted to live in that house, right? Did you know that the house is actually under my name? It was originally my grandmother's, but I inherited it. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to live in my childhood home for the rest of my life."
What? Stop lying. I've never heard anything about this.
I had no reason to tell you. You can ask my brother if you want. Emmy hung up on me after I said that. "Well, that's interesting. Women like her are careful about who to pick on. She knows how to act in front of your brother and mother." So my brother really doesn't know her true nature, huh? He wouldn't have chosen her if he did. But she seems to be careless. She'll slip up sooner or later. If I step in, I might worsen your situation, so let's just see how things go for a while. After discussing with my mother, I decided to live with my aunt for a while. Some time had passed since Emmy's outburst and she called me again.
So it seems like the house really is under your name. I don't get it. Does this mean that Henry received the inheritance money? I haven't heard any of this.
I have no reason to tell you because it has nothing to do with you. By the way, my brother hasn't inherited anything. I plan to get married to my current boyfriend and live in my childhood home. It's located in a good neighborhood, great for raising kids, and has everything within walking distance.
You have a boyfriend? I'm surprised. That house doesn't suit you. From the moment I saw you, I've been bothered by you. You're really getting in my way. In fact, I hate you.
This is the first time we've agreed on something. I absolutely despise you two.
Don't you dare show your face at my wedding. Even if you do come, I'll make things even worse for you. I'll tell Henry and your mother that you're not coming to the wedding. A sister who skips her brother's wedding. I'm looking forward to hearing all sorts of things about you at the ceremony.
God knows what she'll do if I said I'd attend the ceremony. I was starting to feel like I could care less about the whole thing. I answered with a sigh. Fine, as you wish. I won't attend your wedding. Do as you please. I hung up the phone. And I was hit with a wave of exhaustion. Don't worry, love. My aunt scooted to my side right before I knew it. She seemed to have been watching the whole time. Were you told not to come to the wedding? Yeah, but I can't just accept that, right? No, let's respect the bride's wishes. Leave it to me. It's probably best not to look at any text from your mother or brother for a while, especially on the wedding day. She gave a warm smile. On the day of the wedding, I received incessant calls from my mother and brother, but I didn't even look at their texts. I figured they must be criticizing me, fueled by Emmy's words, blaming me for not attending the wedding, so I turned off my phone. I'm home! Huh? Aunt, aren't you supposed to be at the wedding? She returned home in her casual clothes. She definitely didn't look like someone who had just come from a wedding. With you not attending, there's no way I could. Our whole family decided to decline the invitation to their wedding. While I was listening to my aunt's story, the doorbell unexpectedly rang. I went to the front door and saw my mother. She was dressed in a formal gown. Charlotte, I was wrong. I'm sorry. My mother apologized to me with a tired look on her face. When my aunt invited my mother inside, my aunt excitedly asked about the wedding. It seemed like Emmy knew the entire family from my brother's side would be absent, but she kept it a secret from my brother and my mother. My brother and my mother apparently had no idea that their entire family would be absent until today. They were astonished when they arrived at the venue. It looked like Emmy was using this as an excuse to sever her relationship with our family, but since it was a wedding, many guests were friends and people from work, and there were quite a few eyebrows raised at the fact that my mother was the only person attending from the groom's side. The ceremony went on amidst the unusual atmosphere. In the midst of this, Emmy, who was supposed to be receiving all the love and blessings, couldn't bear being whispered about on her big day and got into a fight with my brother. Having heard Emmy's incoherent slander about me, my mother seemed to have understood that I was telling the truth. The wedding ended with the atmosphere at its worst. While my aunt was explaining the situation to my mother, a call came in from Emmy. I put the call on speaker.
What the hell is going on?
The moment I picked up the phone, Emmy's loud voice pierced my ears. What's the matter, Emmy? Why are you shouting?
You orchestrated this, did you? You wicked bastard. You ruined my wedding.
I didn't do anything. You're the one who said that I was a nuisance and that I shouldn't come to the wedding, right? I just consulted with my aunt about it. Both of my parents' families have been around each other for long, and all of our relatives get along very well. Didn't you know that? This time, my aunt had spread the news to all our relatives. Many of the relatives were very fond of me, as I used to take care of my grandmother. They didn't want to attend the wedding of a bride who tried to belittle me, so it seems they all decided to not show up to the wedding.
What the hell? This is too unacceptable. I'm gonna make you pay for this.
Why should I? You're the one who treated me like a nuisance.
You were not working and staying at home, yet you were thanked and loved by everyone around you. You're nothing more than a basic chick who puts in no effort to stay well dressed, yet you own things like branded bags and expensive watches, and they don't even suit you at all. Now, the least you can do is cooperate with me a little bit.
Didn't you hear that I was not working due to some circumstances? I don't want to be around someone with an attitude like yours.
I don't care about what you have going on. You're always living your best life. It's not fair.
Emmy, is what you just said true?
Henry, why are you here?
Emmy, my sister-in-law, was flustered by the sudden sound of my brother's voice. Mid-conversation, Henry had come to visit our aunt's house and had been silently listening to our conversation. Is that how you've been feeling this whole time? What you said about Charlotte was all lies, wasn't it?
No, it's not like that.
Henry pulled out a watch from his pocket. It belonged to me. That's Grandma's watch. Why do you have it, Henry? It was in our house. I never lent it to Emmy. I nodded in agreement. Since I was staying at my aunt's house, I probably hadn't noticed that the watch was missing. When Emmy noticed the watch, she seemed to be perplexed, but I didn't expect her to have stolen it.
I'm sorry, Henry. It was a spur-of-the-moment thing. I was jealous of Charlotte. I'm truly sorry.
Emma apologized to Henry. Emmy, could you also apologize to me for telling me to leave my parents' house, for trying to turn my mother into a housekeeper, for talking smack about me behind my back to my mother and brother, for stealing, and for treating me as if I'm unworthy of respect? Please apologize for all of it. Emmy, it seemed, was too prideful to apologize to me, so she ended the call with a scream. My brother and mother apologized to me. They apologized for not believing me. They both seemed to have received cold stares at the wedding, and having them apologize to me made me feel much better. After that, Emmy was brought by her parents to apologize. Henry filed a divorce from her. She came crying to me while apologizing to me, but I firmly refused her. Henry's intention to divorce was firm, and their marriage, which had not even lasted a year, came to an end. Emmy was also found to have been stealing at work, which turned into a major issue, and she lost her job. I heard rumors that she got in trouble with the police, but I'm not sure it's true or not. As for me, my life's back to normal, and I occasionally visit my relatives. I bragged to Emmy that I had a boyfriend, but in reality, I have no love interest, and I'm now being pestered by my aunt about it.
All you did was only covering the cost of study abroad, and you're acting so arrogant. Do you enjoy blaming people like this? The amount I had given her was $50,000. a sum far too large to be brushed off as she said only. Having treated it so carelessly and then having the audacity to shout at me in such a selfish manner, I finally lost my patience. I want nothing more to do with such a vindictive mother-in-law like you. Don't you dare show up at my daughter's wedding. Fine, I wouldn't dream of it. I hung up the phone in anger after a heated argument. I was too hasty, gave tit for tat. As the living room quieted down, I came to my senses. But I couldn't stand by as my eldest daughter-in-law who lied to people and even used her daughter as a tool to defraud money. To set her straight, I decided on a form of revenge. My name is Catherine. I'm turning 76 this year. I have 2 children, both of them are boys. Therefore, when my eldest son's family gave birth to my granddaughter Emily, I couldn't help but adore her. I didn't want to be a helicopter grandmother, so instead I made sure not to hold back on money for her celebrations. Events like her birthday, entering school, graduation, etc., I was always excited for the photos my son would send. When Emily was in college, my eldest daughter-in-law, Samantha, came to me to talk. Apparently, Emily said she wants to study abroad, but they were having trouble securing funds. It's such a shame for Emily. She's been working so hard at her studies. Well, we can't just cough up that kind of money out of nowhere. Then I'll cover it. How much do you need? Well, it's about $50,000. $50,000? I was a bit taken aback by the amount, but I figured studying abroad for a long period would cost that much. More importantly, I wished to fulfill my beloved granddaughter's wishes as much as possible. So I decided to take out $50,000 from my savings and give it to her. She thanked me repeatedly, so I didn't feel bad about it and had no regrets. However, it turned out that trusting her was a mistake anyways, as I realized it later. I heard from my son, Bob, that Emily had successfully arranged to study in the UK. Bob merely mentioned this like it was part of his work contract with no word of thanks for the money. Well, Samantha had been appreciating it all along, and although I was concerned about my son's attitude at that time, I thought it was just how it was. I was occasionally receiving pictures from Emily during her study abroad. She kept sending me happy reports like making a lot of friends overseas, having experiences she couldn't have had in here, and actually I enjoyed seeing it. But there wasn't anything about the expenses in her emails either. I wondered that I'm weird to expect appreciation, and though I felt uncomfortable, I didn't say anything about it at the time. Thank you so much, mother-in-law. Your help with the study abroad costs was a real lifesaver. That's all right. I got an email from Emily too. It seems she's really enjoying herself. Oh, an email from Emily? What did she talk about? Just about what she ate and such, nothing special. Anything wrong? Every time I saw Samantha, she was excessively grateful. Maybe Samantha had taken care of all the study abroad arrangements for Emily and hadn't really talked about the money aspect between the two of them. I decided to tell myself this to make sense of it all. Wanting both of them to be grateful might be too conceited. Though I felt a bit annoying, I tried not to think too much about it. It was a few years later when these annoyances became clear, when I heard she graduated college and was going to have a wedding. The news of her wedding came in the form of an invitation from her. I was thrilled. It feels like it happened to me when I found the cute message card in the mailbox. Riding on that momentum, I gave her a call. While making small talk, I conveyed a lot of congratulations. During the small talk, thanks to an inconsistency I discovered, I finally realized what had been making me feel uncomfortable all this time. Emily dear, I got your invitation. Congratulations! Thanks, Grandma. Will you come to the wedding? Of course. It was during this seemingly ordinary conversation. We had a great conversation about good old days, and suddenly it turned to her studying abroad during college. She spoke of her experiences as much as she could remember what she studied, how it was at the foreign college. That sounds like a great memory. Just listening to it makes me happy. It really was. If I didn't have to worry about money, it would have been perfect. Huh? What about money? Yeah, I had to take out a scholarship for the study abroad. There were a lot of conditions and it was tough. I tilted my head at her words. I was certain that I had given Samantha $50,000 for Emily's study abroad expenses. With looking at my bank book, I reconfirmed that. I told her that even though I was puzzled by her story, but she insisted that she had secured a scholarship on her own with researching the conditions for the study abroad expenses. No mistake, I have all the documents of the scholarship when I borrowed it. I don't get it. I definitely gave the money to Samantha after discussing it with her. Over the phone, we were both puzzled over, but no matter how much we thought, we couldn't figure out the truth. She said she would check with her mother, then hung up. I worried about what could have happened to such a large amount of money as $50,000. But the next day, I was shocked to know the truth by a phone call from Samantha. "Oh, Samantha, good timing. I wanted to ask you something." "Hey, please don't say unnecessary things to Emily." Samantha shouted at the top of her voice without even greeting me. I didn't want to doubt, but the unnecessary things I told Emily must be about the study abroad expenses. With her voice, I was sure that she had done something with the $50,000. I confronted Samantha with a loud voice as she did to reveal the truth. "What do you mean by unnecessary things? I thought I gave the money for Emily's study abroad expenses." "So? I've already said thank you for that." "But Emily said she borrowed a scholarship. What did you do with the $50,000? When I asked about the usage, Samantha mumbled and tried to cover up. After questioning her heavily several times, Samantha started to make excuses like it was for Emily's wedding, or she was struggling with tuition for college, and those were obviously lies. Losing my patience, I pressed her even harder. "If that's the case, I would have paid if you had told me honestly. What I want to know is why you lied about it." Whatever. Are you regretting giving them money now?" "I just want to know why you lied to get such a large amount of money." When I confronted her, Samantha tried to change the subject by raising her voice. I was getting frustrated with Samantha, who kept lying and trying to cover up. But I stubbornly brought the conversation back to the point and kept asking for the reason, and then she finally snapped and lashed out at me. I was enraged by her audacity, defiantly brushing off the fact that she had deceitfully obtained a large amount of money, like $50,000. "All you did was only covering the cost of study abroad, and you're acting so arrogant. Do you enjoy blaming people like this?" "The one who did something to be blamed for is you, isn't it? Surely you didn't use that money for yourself, did you?" "You're so persistent. I want nothing more to do with such a vindictive mother-in-law like you. Don't you dare show up at my daughter's wedding." At her incredibly selfish remarks, I was finally fed up and responded, "I wouldn't dream of it," before hanging up the phone. I was too hasty, gave tit for tat. As the living room quieted down, I came to my senses. But I couldn't settle down without making my eldest son's wife, who had lied and used her daughter as a pretext to deceive money, face the music. I decided to take some revenge to correct Samantha's dishonesty. Though I had agreed to attend once, my heart was quite painful to inform Emily that I couldn't attend her wedding. However, I couldn't forgive what Samantha has done because I loved my grandchild. Taking a deep breath, I sent an email to Emily. Because of my distrust in Samantha, I conveyed my desire to hand over the wedding gift directly and decided to meet Emily outside. Grandma, you're not coming to the wedding?" "I'm sorry, I have some circumstances this time." "You always say that, Grandma, but you never come to my celebrations." Emily's words made me freeze for a moment. I had been refusing to participate in celebrations, trying not to be a helicopter grandmother. Instead, I have always been willing to provide financial assistance. But upon further reflection, I started worrying about interfering too much because Samantha seemed displeased. Regarding Emily's celebrations, I thought I had been satisfied with just photos, but maybe I was just being avoided without noticing. The money I had been giving for celebrations might not have been used for Emily after all. Thinking about that, I felt the blood drain from my face. "You know, Emily dear, I actually gave your mother the money for your study abroad fees." "I heard that from my mom, but she said she didn't receive it." So when she called me, I asked her about it. I told her about the conversation with Samantha on the phone the other day, how she had evaded telling the usage of $50,000 and how she had furiously yelled at me. Emily might not believe that her mother did such a thing, but despite my worries, Emily lowered her eyes and muttered, "I see." "Mom, she can lie through her teeth without blinking. She tells blatant lies, and if you call her out on it, she turns around and yells." "I see." "That's why I trust what you say. It's unforgivable that she'd swindle money." Emily took my hand and said, Let's get back at her. Given that I wanted Samantha to reflect on her actions, her granddaughter's proposition was a welcome opportunity. Emily worried Samantha might treat me unkindly even at the wedding and suggested regretfully that I don't attend. Instead, she invited me to the pre-wedding photo shoot. But is that all right? Aren't such pictures usually taken with the family? It's fine. I'd rather take them with Grandma than a mother who's always lying. I've always felt sad that there are no photos of Grandma in our albums. A month after this conversation, after discussing with her groom, Emily decided to move the photo shoot earlier to avoid any interference with Samantha. Seeing Emily in her wedding attire was even more splendid than in pictures, and I couldn't help but get excited. Observing the situation, Bob chuckled while offering an apologetic bow. It seems Bob had concerns about Samantha's attitude too. Upon hearing the story from Emily, he seemed to be convinced.
Mom, I'm sorry about everything. I couldn't invite you to Emily's celebration because Samantha told me about your leg condition.
I see. By the way, the money I gave Emily, is that all safe?
I think so. I was there to receive it with her.
That's good then. Bob seemed that he had other concerns about Samantha, and I was told that he is looking into it by himself. Both Emily and Bob seemed upset with Samantha's actions, and also this time with a large amount of money. Just as I was talking to Emily and Bob, who were completely on my side, I received a call from Samantha again. Apparently, she noticed the change in the pre-wedding photo shoot schedule and was unhappy about it. She decided to call and berate me. Hey, mother-in-law, what have you done? What are you talking about? I heard you went ahead and did the pre-wedding photo shoot. How dare you ignore me with did such a thing? Why do you think I would do something like that? It's obvious. You're doing it out of spite because you can't attend the wedding. Samantha snapped triumphantly. I sighed and then decided to inform Samantha of the truth. The idea to change the pre-wedding photo shoot schedule came from Emily and Bob. Upon hearing this, Samantha realized that I had told the two of them the truth and closed her mouth. After a moment of silence, she started yelling at me again. Two people were leaning in close to the phone, making sour faces and shaking their heads. You probably said something like, after all, I'm sure I had paid money for Emily, right? Emily would never believe you without evidence. Excuse me? Emily believed me, and that's why we were able to have this pre-wedding photo shoot without you. Why would Emily believe you over me? Well, it probably has something to do with how you act normally, or would you like me to put her on? When asked that, a response came back like, what? With a loud voice. It seemed they had heard the conversation clearly, and I passed the phone to Emily with a frown and a look of discontent on her face. Mom? Emily, you really are something, not inviting your mother to such an important pre-wedding photo shoot. What were you thinking? Mom, you didn't apologize to Grandma at all, did you? Well, you haven't apologized to me either. What are we going to do about the pre-wedding photos without the mother of the bride in them? Samantha raised her voice and cut her off while she was speaking. Seeing this, Bob took over the call. Though he spoke a little distance away from us, it seemed the conversation didn't go well for Bob either, and he quietly shook his head after hanging up.
I didn't think it would be this hard to communicate.
That's fine, Dad. I'll get back at my mom. You said that before, but what are you planning to do? I have a good idea. Looking at Emily, who was grinning with a mischievous look on her face, Bob and I looked at each other. I told Bob that I would not be attending Emily's wedding, and I asked him to record the event for me instead. A few days later, as promised, Bob showed me the video he had recorded at the wedding, and I was astonished. It was a scene of Emily reading a letter of gratitude to her mother. My mother used the money that my grandmother gave me for studying abroad for her own debt repayment. As the crowd murmured, the video captured her voice clearly. The fact that the money for studying abroad that I was supposed to give Emily was used by Samantha. That she kept this from me, even Emily and Bob. That she had been ignoring me all this while. That even on the day of the wedding, I was made to miss it because of Samantha, and she revealed all this with a loud, clear voice in front of all the relatives. At one point, there was a scene where a figure resembling Samantha was causing a commotion and raising her voice. Stop lying! What's fun about disrespecting your mother? That's the truth, and I have evidence too. The camera caught this exchange. Samantha, who likely wanted to maintain a good face in front of her relatives, was ostracized and slouching at the family table. Even her figure of feeling discomfort was clearly captured on film by Bob. I was continuously astonished by this video, and after watching it to the end, I let out a big sigh. What a wild get back, Emily.
When I investigated and confronted her, it seems she used Mom's $50,000 for debt repayment. Not only that, she also seems to have freely wasted money on travels and shopping.
Oh, really? But isn't that a lot of money?
It's just the tip of the iceberg. She seems to have lied here and there, borrowing money from others too.
At Bob's words, I found my jaw dropped. It's not surprising that she would lie to others as well. It's because she can even lie to her own family so easily. But it's still too harsh. Bob decided to file for a divorce on the grounds of her bad habits. Emily, now married and living separately, thinks it was a good opportunity and seemed to be supporting Bob. After that, I received a report that Bob and Samantha's divorce had been finalized. Samantha seemed to not give up on Emily and is still trying to get in touch with claiming parental rights. Unfortunately, Emily's chosen husband would not allow this, and it seemed that it never happened. I wouldn't want to introduce my child to a lying grandma like her. Emily moves far away, determined not to engage with Samantha at all. By the way, we continue to keep in touch via email. Emily's husband is a nice man. We've gotten along so well as a family since the pre-wedding photo shoot incident. I've only received one phone call from Samantha since then. The call was her complaining, "Since Emily left home to get married, I haven't been able to get in touch at all. Let me see my daughter. You tell her everything was a lie." Of course, I politely refused, and I am currently cutting off contact with Samantha. The $50,000 I gave to Emily for her benefit was apparently squeezed out during the divorce negotiations with Bob and added on as alimony. Her relatives also knew about her misconduct from the wedding incident, and now it seems there is no one else who would take her side. She is currently working day and night to repay the alimony. When I have a child, I'll be sure to tell you first, Grandma. Look forward to it.
Oh, I'm always waiting for good news.
Emily is as energetic as ever and is even more friendly than before. She is even currently planning a family trip for us to make up for the celebrations we could not attend together.